considered the issue of energy, right? Primarily, if you look at the literature in the mainstream debates, energy emerges today as one of the central themes for investigation, for investments, because the general assumption is that the global economy, the global population needs a lot of energy in the decades to come, not only to sustain or provide for the embodied needs of people in this planet, but also for the future economic growth of this planet. So naturally, everybody's talking about energy. In this critical moment, sustainable development also figures as a key emphasis area, because the understanding is, yes, we need energy, but that energy has to be green, renewable, sustainable, and so on and so forth. Now, within this conversation, hydropower or hydropower then is branded as one of the ideal sources for green and sustainable energy. But I think that, as we are seeing from many experiences around us, the answer is way more complex than that, because of two themes that I'm going to address here. One is that this is not a simple equation of economic growth, the everyday needs of people in this planet, or the question of energy in it, but a larger integrated theme in global political economy. So the BRICS countries are typically seen as sites for global production, right? But they're also sites for global consumption. But the economic, industrial, agricultural, and energy bases in the BRICS countries are also fundamentally integrated with the needs and consumptions of the other countries that are somehow dependent on what the BRICS countries might produce and provide and consume. So, growth in India and China and their ability to provide industrial goods, consumer goods, skilled or unskilled services determine the kind of consumption, lifestyle, and lived experiences that people in the global north and south might be able to have. So, at the center of it. So what I'm trying to say is that the seemingly remote, interior, internal issues are at the same time a transnational and global issue. And we should approach these issues accordingly. Next, power itself, right? There's a tendency to see the energy sector, right? Or even more narrowly, the hydropower sector as fuel for the global economy. It's something that will take us to the end, right? It's a means to an end. But we often don't consider the fact that hydropower in itself is a global industry. So when you asked in your question the demands of the global economy, one of the demands of the global economy is to find spaces and places for renewed investment, right? And the energy sector, the hydropower sector in itself is a sector for the investment of capital to make more profit. So this industry, the hydropower industry, provides immense opportunity for those who have capital to invest to seek more profit. So who are involved? All of these constituent industries are looking into many, many investment opportunities, and this sector offers immense profitability, right? And I would even say that we must think about not just how many megawatts, how many thousands of megawatts a hydropower project can provide in 3, 4, or 5 years, but the process itself, how much profit. I would say that in terms of the needs of the global economy, we keep this in mind. We keep this as a very important factor. So if hydropower projects and the dams represent a site for everything that capital stands for, profit maximization, surplus accumulation, nexus between local population and labor force, then we also have to raise questions about old and new modes of privatization, right? Land, forest, water, any kind of resources that are fundamentally linked up with these development projects. And if we factor into energy and hydropower these questions about privatization, both old and new modes of privatization, then a whole new set of questions emerge for us, right? And I'm those questions. But for me, the process at the moment is very important, because the process is creating environmental, ecological, socio-economic displacements and so on and so forth. From what I hear, all the conversations in the media, on TV, the mainstream reporting on the BRICS, they tend to focus on extremely mainstream approaches to development. And it seems to me, despite notable exceptions, that the core focus is how these countries can act like a consortium that has developed at some level a common voice to bargain better terms out of the global economy. So even when the BRICS countries seem to challenge or seem to question or critique the norms of globalization, ultimately the criticism or the challenge is not a fundamental undoing of some of the more exploitative or marginalizing forces of global capitalism, but one that may change the terms of trade or change the terms of production and consumption to their favor, right? And as long as we do that, we will only shift the locus of, or the center of gravity of the global capitalism from one place to another, which may improve the standards of living and life circumstances for several hundreds, thousands, million people, but not really bring about any kind of more substantial long-term sustainable change for sure. Moreover, the second point I would raise in response to your question is, so where do we take this conversation about BRICS, right? If it's going to be just a challenge to the Western norms and we displace the norms to suit our needs into our terms but not really change things, then we have to raise that what else can the BRICS collaboration represent, right? Who are involved? What kinds of questions are we raising? Is it in favor of the millions of peasants and fisher folk and people who live in and around the forests in Brazil, in India, in China? Or is it more for the investor class and the techno-bureaucratic elite in these countries?